Hey everyone, this is Captain Steve Roger from Into the Blue TV. And as soon as I feel a little break from this heat, I know that hunting season is upon us. Actually, the first time I ever went hunting, a buddy took me. Wasn't my father or my grandfather. In fact, I took my father on his very first hunt. Well, Academy Sports and Outdoor Stores has everything to gear up for the field for less. Plus, you can shop a wide selection of ammo, shotguns, deer corn, rifle, feeder, game cameras, camo, and more from the brands you trust. Text HUNT24 to 22369 to take $20 off a $100 purchase when you shop hunting supplies at academy.com. Need a hunting license? Pick it up in store while you're shopping.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon Prime. There's nothing sweeter than baking cookies during the holidays. With Prime, I get all my ingredients delivered right to my door, fast and free, no last-minute store trips needed. And of course, I blast my favorite holiday playlist on Amazon Music. It's the ultimate soundtrack for creating unforgettable memories. From streaming to shopping, it's on Prime. Visit Amazon.com/Prime to get more out of whatever you're into.
Join Justin Townsend and the Harvesting Nature crew as they explore the world of cooking wild fish and game while sharing recipes, tips, tricks, and lessons learned from their pursuit of wild food. We sure hope you ate before the show, 'cause you're gonna leave hungry. This is the Wild Fish and Game Podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back. So today's show, we're going to dive into kind of a cool topic. I was perusing the internet the other day, and I read an article, I believe it was in New Hampshire publication, something, New Hampshire State Radio, that's what it was. And I saw Abby, who's our guest here, who we'll introduce in just a minute, with her program that she's helped create in Vermont, which I think is really cool, and we're going to dive a lot into it. I thought it very appropriate for this sort of time of year. One, we're kind of on the tail end of whitetail season, deer season, in parts of the country it's wrapped up, or part of the continent, I should say, it's wrapped up, but others are still going. But I'll clue you in. It has to do with deer, obviously, with food, obviously, because we're a food podcast. And then it has to do with roadkill meat and donated meat to feed people. So it hits a lot on that sort of like food security conversation that we've been having here over the last couple months. If you go back and listen to one of our episodes, I think it's 2 or 3 back, where we talk about how wild food is shaping the future of modern food. And we talk about food security in there quite a bit. And I think this is a prime example to support that. So it's very timely, but also too, I thought it very fitting, since we're in hunting season and we're getting into the holiday season, and the holiday season is about giving, that if you are looking to donate meat, this is a great time. As we have this conversation, you'll see why it all plays out. But that's sort of like where my mind was at. And then I kicked it around to the others, and I got the thumbs ups and reached out to Abby. And here we are chatting today about this very thing, which I think you're going to love. So, couple news and update things from me. We just adjusted the dates for our April 2025 Wild Pig Camp. It was originally towards the middle end of April. Now it's going to be the 10th through the 13th. That one's with Hank Shaw down in Texas. I'm going to be there. Adam's going to be there. The other Adam's going to be there. And we're going to have the whole crew there ready to do that. We're about halfway full with our tickets now. So if you haven't got that, get it, because I project that by the end of January, we'll be sold out of that camp. So if you're really looking for that, reach out. We do have a deposit feature where you can put a little bit of money down to save your seat and then sort of pay it off as we go, which is a great option. We have all our spice blends in restock. We have a deal that automatically, if you buy 3 t-shirts, you get a spice blend for free. I'll tell you, if you buy 4 spice blends, I'll give you a free spice blend. I just did that today for somebody who purchased. So our spice blends are tasty and delicious. Big game, wild fish, upland fowl, waterfowl, and small game, and the wild fungi blends. So those are great stocking stuffers. They literally fit in a stocking. We tested it, I promise you. And I can get them out to you pretty quickly, usually 3 or 4 days. So if you're looking for something last minute, it's a great way to buy. Just head over to our website. You'll see the sign for it right on the front over at harvestingnature.com. All right. Quick update for me. So this last weekend, I went out on a management hunt here in Maryland. And it was at one of the state parks put on by the state park and DNR. And we were there to harvest deer. So there were 30 veteran hunters there. Veterans as in veteran service members there. And by the time that I called it quit about an hour early, it was frozen solid. And Abby, you'll probably laugh at me being from Vermont because it's still cold for me, even though I'm mid-Atlantic. It got pretty chilly. I found myself, I was sitting out there shivering, and I was just like, I don't know why I'm doing this. I saw only a few deer. One I passed on because it was outside of my antler restriction. And then I heard a few shots. But out of 30 hunters, we only shot, I think, maybe 6 to 8 deer, which is crazy because this state park has deer everywhere. And they're upward. The limit was four per hunter, one could be antlered. It was wild.
I thought Maryland had a lot of deer.
Tons of deer. I don't know. I talked to friends who participated in different, or were out hunting or participated in other management hunts that weekend, and it's like the deer just stopped moving this weekend. I don't know if it was the cold and the wind, and they just kind of holed up, but I had some come through, and they just they hauled ass through, and they were gone. I couldn't even get them to stop for a shot. So
does Maryland have as many deer as New Jersey?
Yeah, I think so.
Wow.
We have two main regions here. So we've got Region B, which is kind of the western side. I think it's 3 counties, or A is 3 counties on the western side of the state, and then the rest is B. And then they have what's a metropolitan deer zone. So that's kind of around DC, around Baltimore. There are unlimited antlerless tags.
Is it bow only or?
No, it's bow, black powder, and shotgun or straight-walled cartridge, and then the western counties will be rifle for the firearm season, and then they have a primitive season, which is your trad bows, and I have to look and see if it's flintlock only or if it's just any black powder. So
do you use crossbows down there?
Yep, you can use crossbows. Yeah. I've not ventured that direction yet. Still pulling the compound bow.
Yeah, once you injure your shoulder, you'll be getting a crossbow.
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair. No, people swear by them. I just I was in Colorado last before here, and they didn't do, I think, crossbows only if you got note from the doctor. I think that it was the same in California as well.
Yeah, it used to be that way in Vermont, and then we changed it. So now anybody can use a crossbow for archery. And I think, in some ways, it's not great because it's an easy poacher weapon. Mm-hmm. It's quiet. You can just poke it out the window pretty easily. But on the other hand, it kind of opens up archery for kids and also women that aren't very strong that, can't draw back the poundage that they need to be, good to use. So I can see positive.
Do you feel like you get less lost deer as well?
I haven't looked at the numbers, so I don't know for sure, but I think the learning curve is definitely less steep on a crossbow. Yeah. And also, like I said, if you're not strong or if you have injury, you can still use it at a high poundage.
Sure. Yeah.
So.
No, it's I don't know. I'm still on the fence. I mean, just for me personally, I think it's great for anybody that wants to do it. It's a legal method of take in your state or whatever. Go for it. That really kind of wraps up sort of my side of it. But I'll go over to you, Abby. People will probably have guessed at this point that you're in Vermont, but can you tell us sort of more about yourself, your background, sort of how you got into everything you're at now? Feel free.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a state game warden for Vermont, and I am in the Rutland County area of Vermont. That's where I enforce and where all the towns that I cover are. So before I became a game warden, I actually did cut up wild game at a butcher shop here in Vermont for a few seasons, so I had experience with that. And then I also grew up on a farm where I would slaughter our lambs, so I had some experience from that as well, which kind of we'll talk about later is how it relates to the program, the Venison for Vermonters program. But yeah, that's kind of my background. I went to college and I have a bachelor's in science, and I did that in Vermont, a Vermont school. So I've been really in Vermont most of my life. I've lived in Pennsylvania when I was a kid for 3 years, but other than that, and one stint in New Hampshire for about a year as a kid, it's pretty much been Vermont my whole life.
Calling Vermont home.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. So.
I think it's ironically one of the few states. I've been to a lot of states, but I have not been to Vermont.
Really?
It's on the list. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm looking to get up that way.
There's a lot of trees in Vermont.
That's good.
Yeah. Yep. Lots of trees, and it used to be, I think it was like 20% open, like way back in the day. It was 20% open when they had a bunch of sheep farms, and 20% forested, 80% open, and now it's like flip flop. So now we have like about 80% forested and 20% open now.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. And do you guys? Odd question. Do you guys get moose in Vermont?
We do, yeah. And the moose are kind of, it's interesting. There's a lot of moose up in the Northeast Kingdom. Well, Northeast Kingdom of Vermont is the northeastern part of Vermont. They call it the Northeast Kingdom.
I love it.
Yeah, it's its own little world up there. But there's a ton of moose up there, in the two zones up there. And then down the Green Mountain Range, which goes all the way down Vermont, down kind of the center of Vermont, down the spine. There's moose there too, but we only allow moose hunts in the Northeast Kingdom because the populations are pretty high up there. Yeah.
So it's like that's a new definition for like the Great White North in my mind, the Northeast Kingdom.
Yeah, that's where the moose hunts are. That's where there's a lot of snowmobiling up there and stuff like that. So a lot
Nice.
of
So
big woods.
Where are you in relation to that in the state?
I'm like mid state, right
Okay.
along the greens. So
Okay.
that's my area. When I first was in my district, I had 5 moose hit by vehicles.
Oh,
I
wow.
think it was the first year or the second year, yeah. And then there haven't been as many moose lately. And there's brainworm that they face. It's a disease they get that will be fatal for them. And then there's also habitat. So we have a lot of trees in Vermont, but we don't have a lot of like new growth.
Oh.
And that's what moose need to eat. That's what they eat is new growth forests. So up in the Northeast Kingdom, there's a lot of paper companies that do logging, and so they log an area, and then this new growth, grows up, and that's what the moose browse on. And so there's a lot of really good habitat for them up there, which leads to higher populations as well.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
and there's fewer white-tailed deer up there. Like the densities of white-tailed deer are less. So for that reason, it's not as white-tailed deer are actually one of the contributors to brainworm. So they can like host it essentially, but it doesn't affect them, and then it does affect moose. So the higher your deer populations in an area with moose, the worse the
lower
brainworm
your-
could be. Yeah,
Oh, wow.
it's a complicated
Wow.
relationship.
This is good. This is good. I didn't know what brainworm was prior to this.
It's a
And,
pretty yeah. The moose, when they have it, they start to usually they start to hang around people and roads and stuff, and then they start to do circles. You'll see them, in the same area a lot, and then pretty soon they'll be doing, smaller and smaller circles until they're just like literally turning in a circle with their head kind of cocked to the side, and that's when we know, like it's obvious it's a brainworm moose.
Is it very similar to like the CWD behavior, like the circling?
We don't have CWD in Vermont. Knock on wood, and we hope to keep it that way.
Good, yeah.
So I haven't had direct experience with CWD, other than to submit samples for testing because we do test for it because we obviously want to detect it if we ever were to get it. But yeah, with brainworm, it's just like it's like a lack of fear of humans and anything really, and then the circling, which is typically what we see. Yeah, and like the kind of cocked head, like it's kind of like tilted to the side, usually.
Wow,
yeah,
that's a bummer.
It is very very bummer. Yeah, and then winter ticks is another thing that really can especially for calves. It's a tick that stays on them through all 3 life cycles and sucks blood and causes them to be anemic, especially in calves.
Oh.
Anyway.
Holy smokes. Wow. I've learned a lot about mooses today.
Yeah. We do cut up moose for the program too, so.
That's good, yeah. Let's get into that. So you introduced the program a little bit, Venison for Vermonters. Can you give me like the quick snapshot, and then we'll go back in time to like how it came to be?
Yeah. So Venison for Vermonters is essentially a program where we're mainly wardens right now, collect roadkill that is salvageable. So we oftentimes are tasked with putting down animals that are still alive. Say they get a broken leg or something, or whatever, an injury where they're not dead yet. And we have to go respond to that. And we dispatch that animal. We know it's fresh. And then that animal can be donated to the program, cut up, and given to food shelves. And then also we have individuals as well that we give the meat to. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. It's a way to not waste, I guess, those animals that can be utilized. And also to give back to the community and provide a good, healthy source of protein for food shelves. Because, you go to a food shelf and you see a lot of, old stale bagels and cans of stuff. But what you don't tend to see very much of is meat, especially venison and, really good high quality protein. So that's kind of what we're trying to provide. And to kind of go back, I guess, to the origins of how it started, game wardens in Vermont have always given away whole animals to people that want them. So, for instance, that circumstance I was just talking about, where a game warden comes and puts down an animal that's injured, that's not going to be able to make it. Typically, we would give that animal whole away to somebody that we know can process it themselves, and we still do that. All over the state, wardens still do that. So that hasn't really changed. But when I moved to my district, well, actually, prior to that, I had a field training officer. His name is Jeff Whipple. He's still a warden, and he's now a sergeant. But anyways, he was my field training officer whenever I was training to be a game warden. And he actually used to cut up meat for people from time to time and give it to people that needed it. And I really admired that. And so when I got to my district, I started doing that as well for people. And it wasn't really a program per se at that point. It was just something I did in my off time. For people that couldn't process their own meat, because there's a lot of people in my district. I live in the second largest city in Vermont is in my district, which is not very big. I don't know how many people are in it, but everybody else would think it was like a small town. Okay, however, there's people who live in apartments, right, in cities, and so I couldn't just give them whole deer. So I wanted to be able to give them some meat, and they have a little tiny freezer maybe or something like that, and they can't accommodate a whole lot. So that's kind of how it started, and then. In 2020, when the whole COVID thing happened, for some reason we were getting a lot of roadkill animals. Maybe a lot of free time in their hands, and they were driving around. I don't know what the case was. We also got a lot of moose hit by cars that year in the Northeast Kingdom and even outside of the Northeast Kingdom. And so Jeff Whipple and I kind of teamed up, and we cut meat at a butcher shop near his house, and we processed that year around over 3,000. I think it was like 3,500 pounds of packaged meat.
Wow.
Just between the two of us.
That's great.
I would go up there and we just cut meat, and it was actually a lot of fun, and we were able to, produce a lot that year. And then the next year we did around 3,000 pounds as well. And then I just went, now I don't go over to Jeff's butcher shop anymore. I have my own place that I do it at. And then I just take deer that are in my district that I respond to. So ones that get hit by cars, or sometimes there's illegal deer that are taken, and wardens around me will, bring the deer to me to cut up. And that animal is then, all the meat from it is weighed, so we know how much, came out of the animal, and then that meat is donated to this program.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think when I get excited by a lot of things like this, obviously, when you find just like little pockets of awesomeness. And I think what you guys have created is like really cool. It's something, as you said, everybody in Vermont, like with the wardens, traditionally gave away game, but like going the extra yard and like thinking through and like, hey, how can I sort of like help the people that can't? Because I see that too. Like here in DC, people live in apartments, all that. I mean, well, one, you can't hunt in DC, so you have to go to Maryland or Virginia to go hunt. But two, like what do? You're like processing game on your back patio.
Yeah,
which,
exactly.
Depending who you're around, you may get some eyebrows. You may get the police called on you. You never know. But
I mean, in Vermont, it's pretty much. So I lived in an apartment in Vermont, and I quite frankly, I did process my own stuff there.
Sure.
Vermont's a little bit different in that regard, which is great. There's a lot of people that have kind of that experience or that background, or their families hunted, and maybe they don't. And so like you were just saying, but there are a lot of people who have apartments in the city, and it is hard to like, especially if you're like a second floor apartment.
Yeah. Well, even too, I mean, you think about like just to the animal itself, like if you come just drop off a deer to somebody, you're like, here you go. And they're just like, what do I do?
Yeah. So. And even more so with moose. So that's kind of like when we first started this program, like legit started the program. there was a lot of moose, and like I don't typically like to give one person an entire 800-pound moose because number one, most people don't have refrigeration. Like they don't walk-in cooler, so they've got to get that processed right away or it's going to spoil. So then, if they don't have a walk-in cooler, they've got to really, do it fast, or it ends up part of it spoiling, and that's a lot of meat to go to waste, that could have been utilized. And so I like to kind of spread it around and also give it to people who maybe even people that don't have that experience of harvesting their own animal and that connection with nature, and kind of like maybe fostering that in a way. With people that wouldn't have that ability, or even like I've had older people too that I've given meat to, and they're like, oh, I'm so grateful for this because I used to hunt, and I can't hunt anymore. I'm too old. So,
I think it's a bit of a, like we frame it, venison diplomacy, right? So, well, it's sharing in the harvest, but also too, like, you never know who you're gonna like give a special moment to for remembrance, or also to like connect somebody who may have never, and then maybe their next season they're in a hunter's ed class and then out hunting on their own, which would be great, because that's a good check in the box as well to say like, hey, this led to sort of like solving maybe a food security issue to where now somebody can kind of go out and provide for themselves in this example.
Yeah, and I also do processing demos, so I teach people how to process deer as well. So it usually, like, I don't know how many times a year, I'll do it at different events that Fish and Wildlife holds, Vermont Fish and Wildlife. And that's something I'm also pretty passionate about, because like I like people to be able to kind of provide for themselves if they want to, be self-sufficient. And so teaching people like those skills of butchering and how to like process an entire deer yourself, I think is super valuable, because those same people then could maybe be one of the ones that we give a whole deer to, like a roadkill deer. So.
Man, that's cool. I like it a lot. So how many years has it been that you guys have been doing this?
So the program, like, officially, I guess, started in 2020. So it's been, it was March of 2020. So like
almost
4.5, 5. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
Up on 5 years.
That's good. How has it changed? Have you guys grown in the state?
Well, we're starting to grow more now. We're looking into developing a nonprofit, which has been kind of the main issue. And for me, like, I put a lot of effort into the program, but I do a lot of processing myself. And I'm a game warden, so I have all my other job duties as well. So it's hard for me. Sometimes it's hard for me to work on like the logistics of things and like developing an organization whenever I'm like cutting meat, like,
sure. Yeah.
So it's a little hard to do both all the time. So right now we are starting like the preliminary steps for a nonprofit. But to kind of answer your question about how it's changed, it hasn't changed a lot since we started it 4 years ago. And that's mainly because it's just been so hard to juggle everything as one of the few people that are actually kind of running the program. And now one of the wardens just north of me, John Trung, he is working with Barry City, which is a police department. And they wanted to be involved with the program as well and get meat. So the officer there, Flurry's his last name, he really was interested in this program and interested in getting deer, getting them to a volunteer butcher, and then distributing that to people in his community, which is really cool. And he got a butcher on board who's willing to cut meat for free for us.
That's awesome.
It's awesome, yeah. And then there's also another one up north that's doing it as well. So it's not just me, but I'm the main butcher in central Vermont.
Okay, but
like
you guys,
South Central.
It's kind of like it's picking up a little steam.
It is.
Sounds like
It sure is. And as soon the main issue has been the nonprofit. So as soon as we can develop that nonprofit, then we can accept donations from the public to fund butchers, which would then expand the program even further, because we wouldn't just be relying only on volunteers.
Okay. Yeah, that's key. I know, and you probably get a discounted rate from a butcher or processor, but it's still like those folks have to shuffle time and money as well.
Exactly, and I hate to to rely on volunteer butchers because, like you said, it is. I know I process animals. I know how much effort and how much time that takes and resources, and I would love to be able to pay the butchers.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
Lots of sore backs as well.
Yeah. Sore carpal tunnel.
Yeah. Oh, and it's cold. Cold work.
You get warmed up though once you start on your 5th deer, of the day.
How many deer can you do in a day?
When I was cutting, just for the cutting parts, I was just cutting. I wasn't skinning. I could do a deer in half an hour. It was about my rate, But yeah, now it's like if I'm doing skinning and packaging too, it takes about an hour.
So whenever you guys, as far as break all the cuts down, or break it down, how far down are you breaking the cuts?
So for me, myself, or our volunteer butchers?
Whoever.
For the volunteer, I tell them, you can do whatever you want. You can do whatever cuts you want, or you can grind the whole deer, and we'll just have all ground burger. Because I want it to be as easy for them as possible, because they're donating their time.
Sure.
But as far as how I cut, I typically will do, obviously you have to always have grinding, because you have scraps, so it always has to go into grinding. I usually have about a third ground meat, or a third to a half ground. And then I'll do usually 2 shoulder roasts, which is what I like to do with the shoulders. And then the rear legs, I will do top and bottom round sirloin tip. And I'll either steak those or leave those whole so that people can grill them and then steak them up after they're cooked, which is what I prefer. Because, I don't know, when I cut it into like inch wide strips, I usually end up overcooking my steak in the pan. So I like to cook it in a large form and then cut it kind of like a loaf of bread after it's rested.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Nice medium rare temp or something.
Yeah.
Get it. Yeah. Like a full, like an oven roast, not necessarily like a pot roast.
Yeah. And then of course
Nice.
the straps or the loins I leave.
Yeah.
I section them into like 3 sections and leave those whole because I know people like to grill those.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
No, that's good. I was wondering how far down, because we do a lot when we talk about sort of like the butchering process. We just wrapped up a whole series on going all the way through all the cuts, like front to back, on an animal. We got way down in the rabbit holes of like we were talking about trotters and organ meats and all that stuff. So
my favorite cut on a deer, and I don't do this for the food shelf because most people don't know how to use this cut, is the shank.
Yes.
The shank is the best part of the deer. I don't care. Everybody's like, oh, the back strap. No, the shank.
The shank. Did we just become best friends? I don't know.
You know why it is? It's because of all that connective tissue and stuff that breaks down and adds so much good like flavor and like texture and everything to the meat.
I'll have to send you we have a t-shirt on the front of it. It says Shanks and Praises, and it's just got like a cross-cut picture of a shank. Yeah, that's phenomenal.
I've not had trotters. I've not had trotters. I'll have to tell you that.
It's go back and listen to the episode if you want. We get into it, but I would say probably like one of the big things you could do with trotters is like if you make stock. After you get the hair off of them, clean them really well, take them and put them in with your stock, because similar to shanks, there's a lot of connective tissue in there. And that will like thicken up a stock really, really well, make it super rich.
Like chicken feet. So my family raises chickens and we butcher them, and we always save the feet, and you just like scald them and then you can peel the cuticle off. So it's like a nice clean foot. And same thing, my sister uses it for stock, and she says it makes the best stock ever. It's like really thick.
It'll make it just like kind of like Jello once it's cooled, and it's just like so gelatinous and good. Also, too, apparently there's a cut in, I think it's inside kind of back a little bit. There's like one cut of meat that they call like the oyster in there. I don't know. I haven't. No. On a deer.
Huh.
Like one cut of sort of connective tissue. I don't know. I haven't explored it. There's a guy, his name's Alan Burgo. He's written a lot about it. If you look him up online, The Forager Chef, he talks. He goes into trotters, and a lot of our research, we use his stuff, and then, of course, some of our own experience. And Adam, who's not on here tonight, has some experience with them as well.
Is the oyster on the back strap or the loin?
No. On the foot.
Oh, the foot.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah, that I've never cooked a deer foot, so I would not know that.
Yep. Deer
That's
trotters.
Wild. I'll tell you what I did do the other day, though, was, that fat around the kidneys that's, like, really good fat, like just solid, pure fat? I made candles.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and they worked out really well.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Did
I just it down.
I'm curious. So I do, I've been doing soap.
I made soap with bear fat, and that's all I use now, is my bear fat.
Yeah, we use the bar soap from Venison.
I
did a whole batch. I mix it with coconut oil and grapeseed oil.
Okay.
Give it kind of like some lather and some some clean, but I have some downstairs that's ready to make soap with or something else. Maybe I'll try candles.
You should. I mixed probably, it was like 90% the fat, deer fat, and then I did like about 10% beeswax because I had like a really intricate mold. And I'm sure it would be perfectly fine without the beeswax because I don't think it really did much for it. But I really wanted it to work out with this mold with a lot of folds and stuff in it. Mm-hmm. So I was like, I'm just going to put a little beeswax in there in case it's not
cool.
hard.
Yeah, I'll have to try it. Did you add any scent to it, or is it just straight?
I did it straight, and it smells really good. Like, it doesn't smell like anything. It's just like, I can't really hard detect any odor to it. But you can add scent, like essential oils, like peppermint, or whatever you want for your smell.
I'm sold. I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, I've read that the fat around the kidneys is really pure. Like if you use like the body fat, like the fat in the back or something like that, I've read that it's not as clean of a burn.
Okay, well I've got it. Mine's a mix because I pulled some of the fat and stuff, the leaf, like the leaf lard, and then I pulled some of the sort of fat off the back and other cuts. Yeah. So we'll see. TBD.
Well, also the type of wick you use too. You got to use the right size wick for your candle as well.
What size should I use?
Well, there's it depends on your size of your candle. So if you're making like a jar candle, for instance, I mean it's like a 1-inch jar, which I don't know if you even have a jar that small. You'd want to use a number 1 wick, and I would do like square braid. And then if you have a 2-inch diameter, you'd use number 2. There's also number 2 zeros, which are for tapered candles, and that's a small wick. So you just want the plain number 2 if you're doing a 2-inch candle.
Okay, I think I probably have a 2-inch jar. All right, this is good stuff. I'm gonna go dive in a rabbit hole after this and read a bunch of stuff. So you got me a good jumping off point. All right,
kind of out here, but
I'm gonna bring us back around. That's all right. We'll go to
Ryan Reynolds here for Mint Mobile. One of the perks about having 4 kids that you know about is actually getting a direct line to the big man up north. And this year, he wants you to know the best gift that you can give someone is the gift of Mint Mobile's unlimited wireless for $15 a month. Now, you don't even need to wrap it. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited. See mintmobile.com for details.
This episode is brought to you by AWS. Amazon Q Business is the new generative AI assistant from AWS. Many tasks can make business slow, like wading through mud. Help! Luckily, there's a faster, easier, less messy choice. Amazon Q can securely understand your business data to help you streamline tasks, like summarizing quarterly results or doing complex analyses in no time. Q got this. Learn what Amazon Q Business can do for you at aws.com/learn more.
I'll bring us back around. We already hit on where does the venison and moose, so deer and moose, where does it come from? So
we also too, though, to kind of add a little bit more to that. We do accept hunter donations too.
That's my next question.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and that's something that this program hasn't really been publicized too much, up till this point, because I really do want to develop a nonprofit so that we can accept more donations for processors. That said, though, we do accept. I have had people contact me wanting to donate deer that they've harvested or are going to harvest, and I gladly accept that if they want to donate that. It's just kind of sometimes arranging, who's available to pick that up can be difficult logistically, but it is definitely something that we're accepting and probably in the future will grow the more people know about this program.
So what do you think what are your major sort of like challenges or barriers that you faced in kind of like collecting and distributing?
Yeah. I mean, everything's a challenge really with this sort of effort, especially whenever it's not a real organization per se developed, like a really fleshed out organization. Like I don't have people that are volunteering to go pick up this meat from the butcher or transport it to a food shelf. Right now, food shelves typically, some of them will come to me if they're far away and they're outside of my coverage area, but I'm usually the one that is bringing the stuff to the food shelf. So I pick up the animal roadside, I oftentimes put it down, I process it, and then I deliver. So it's it's a lot of work for one person, and ideally it would be great to have volunteers that do that. So say we get this going and we have people that are willing to go pick up that meat from the butcher and bring it to the food shelf, then that would eliminate wardens from having to do that as well.
No.
So
Okay.
that's definitely one of the hurdles, I guess, at this point. And then, of course, the obvious hurdles with roadkill is getting to it in time before it spoils. And I think a lot of people hear this about this program, and they're like, "Oh, gross!" Like, they're scraping a disgusting deer off the road and feeding it to poor people at the food shelf. Like, no, that's actually not at all the case. These animals are fresh, the ones that we are processing, and I have a lot of experience knowing whether an animal's fresh or not, whether it's still good. So these animals are essentially ones that are similar to animals that you hunt. Like say you shot a deer and it expired, and you went over there 2 hours later and recovered that deer and gutted it and brought it to the processor. Like that's the type of animal, the caliber of animal that we're dealing with here.
It's crazy people's perception on like the roadkill stuff. We did an article on Harvest in Nature a while back. I say we. Ben, who was our editor, one of our editors at the time, he did one on a whole article on like eating roadkill, and it's certainly like got a very mixed perception of it. But here's the thing that we sort of learned through it. So there are only 30 states in the United States where it's legal to harvest roadkill.
What?
So, yeah, right? So there's 20 states where it's not.
Let me guess. Well, actually, no, I won't guess.
You would be surprised, I bet.
Really? What are the,
Yeah.
do you know what the 20 are? Like any of the 20?
I can tell you one of them is Texas.
No way.
Yep. Yeah.
Serious? Wow, that's
Yeah.
great. I would never guess Texas.
Yeah, I think we might have a map on there on the article. I'll link the article in the show notes so everybody can take a peek. But yeah, it's quite interesting. And people's sort of perception too of like, oh, roadkill. It's exactly people think exactly what you said. Like, oh, you're gonna scrape this animal and like come off. But in a lot of cases, it's like, are you picking it up because you hit the animal, or did you see it, or is it you're well versed enough in sort of looking at animals to know like, oh, I'm comfortable picking it up because I know it's only been here for an hour or two, or I drove into town, it wasn't there before. Yeah. I shopped at the grocery store, drove back, and it's there now.
Yeah. And also there's a lot of other factors that come into play too, like temperature.
Yeah.
You have a deer hit in August when it's 90 degrees out. That thing's not going to last near as long as a deer hit in the middle of winter when it can cool off fast. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there's just so many factors. And also, like, where the animal's hit in the body makes a huge difference. If it's paunched or not, like if it's, stomach contents are ruptured inside, that will definitely make it go bad a lot faster, even in ideal situations. So, it's just a lot of factors. And if you know what you're doing, you can tell what's going on with it. But I'm actually still kind of shocked that there are states that don't let you eat roadkill. Is it that they don't let you pick it up, or is it against the law to eat it?
Some it's against the law to eat it. Some it's against the law to pick it up. And each state, interestingly enough, has slightly different regulations on like how you have to sort of handle it. So
yeah, in Vermont, for deer and bear and stuff like that, and really any animal, it's not legal to just like grab it and not call. You have to call and get a number for it. But our dispatchers give numbers for deer all the time. So like if you hit one or you saw one that you wanted to pick up, you're a normal guy, going down the road or gal, you could just call in to dispatch and be like, hey, there's a dead deer hit by a car or whatever, and they'll give you a case number for it, and then you can legally possess it.
I think it was Alaska. There's a waiting list. You get on a roadkill waiting list, and then as it comes up, like because they get so many animals there, and eventually and I think it probably helps too, like it helps prevent people from purposefully hitting animals.
Yeah. And that can happen, I guess, but it's
you would have to be pretty desperate to like, all right, like swerve into that.
I've heard of it, but it's a little bit different scenario. It's more people like driving through fields.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's not roadkill at that point.
Yeah, there's a little something else going on. I wouldn't classify that as roadkill.
Yeah, definitely not. It's like you're half mile from the road. It's not roadkill anymore. But do you have any like stories that you could share of like how you've seen this program sort of like positively impact people?
Yeah, I mean, I give most of the meat to food shelves. I do give it to private individuals sometimes, and I've heard people are very thankful for it. It's it's always in demand. Let's just put it that way. food shelves, when I give it to them, they send me a nice letter saying, everybody loved the venison. If you have any more, like, please bring it. And really, it's just I don't have enough right now,
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I'm hoping that if the program expands and we have more processors, then maybe wardens in other parts of the state can donate their surplus of salvageable roadkills to the program and get them processed, so that we have more meat to give to food shelves that want it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How many food shelves do you give to now?
Oh, I have to look back at my notes, but like I give to one, a few in my area, a couple way down south in Vermont. I've given to food shelves up north that are pretty far away. We're willing to drive down and pick this stuff up, which is awesome. When they're willing to put in the effort to come down, and because for me it's driving all over the state I can't do that, all the time. So yeah, I couldn't say exactly how many, but a few around, quite a few around are accepting it. And then also up in the Northeast Kingdom, now that we've kind of covered what that is, there's a processor up there as well. And one of the wardens, Will Seekers, he donates a lot of meat to the food shelves up there. And then in the kind of northwestern part of the state, another warden, Chad Barrett, he also is working with a volunteer processor to donate to his food shelf, his local food shelf. So it's definitely growing. More wardens are getting involved with it, and more volunteer processors as well.
That's awesome. I was just thinking back. So growing up as a kid, we got so I grew up in Oklahoma on the reservation, and we got a lot of like commodity foods, and we would occasionally get like ground bison and buffalo, and it was always like a really special treat whenever you got it, because you made something like really exciting with it. So I was just thinking in my head, like, probably how excited people are to go to the pantry and see like fresh venison on the shelf, and like or not on the shelf, I guess, in the freezer, cooler, whatever. But no, I think it's really cool. Something that came up when I was at this management hunt the other day, we were talking sort of at large about donating. So Maryland has a program. It's called Maryland's Farmers and Hunters Feeding the Hungry, and you can take your deer to a processor. There's like select ones, and if you pay the processing fee, you basically just donate it. And folks were planning to do that from this hunt, which I thought was really cool. But then they were like, some places are stopping doing it because the food pantries or food shelves aren't taking it anymore. And I was like, I wonder, to me, I was curious. I was like, is it a demand signal from people shopping, or maybe they don't, I think
that's probably something different. So the food bank in Vermont does not take it. Food shelves are, and that's a distinction that I like to make here. The food bank's a big organization. It's a one, I don't even know what I would call it, but it's its own entity, the food bank in Vermont. And they don't accept wild game because it's not USDA inspected and all that. Because wild game can never be USDA inspected, because USDA inspected has to be slaughtered on site. And of course, there's no wild game that's ever slaughtered on site at a processor, obviously, because they're shot in the field. So that they don't accept it. But we have what we call food shelves, and pretty much every town in Vermont has a food shelf, and it's like the local food pantry, if you will. And they're their own little thing. And those are the ones that we give the meat to, and those are the ones that are, love to get that meat, and so do their patrons, for sure. There's definitely demand for it, at least in Vermont anyways, with the food shelves.
And I would think so too, and maybe that's just something locally, like you said, with the food bank here or in Maryland or all that. Because then I see like you've got Virginia has one, Hunters for the Hungry. Pennsylvania has Hunters Sharing the Harvest. Wyoming, I'm familiar with as well. They've got Wyoming, like Food from the Field. They've got another couple of programs. Like, there's states. It's all donation. I think so far your program's the only one I've come across where people are actually doing the work and then donating the meat, which I think is awesome.
I just think if somebody's going to donate an animal that they harvested, why should they have to pay to get it processed too?
Yeah.
That's why I really want to have a program where that's paid for. Like, if you want to donate an animal that you harvested, you don't have to pay to get it processed. I mean, if you want to, that's awesome, but like that you wouldn't have to, because that limits the amount of people that are going to actually donate. I think Pennsylvania pays. I think their organization pays for it to be processed.
Do they pay? Yeah, because I think so. That organization, I think they're affiliated through the NRA as well. So there's some.
And they have a ton of sponsors. That actually, so when we first developed this program in 2020, I looked at their website heavily, and I was like, "This looks cool. I want to do something like this, but with roadkill." Because, in Vermont, we don't have near as many really not near as many deer harvested in Vermont as Pennsylvania does. And I looked at the numbers, like the deer harvest numbers, and they have a lot more deer harvested in Pennsylvania. So they have more opportunity for hunters to donate their kills versus Vermont, where we have not quite as many deer, well, not near as many deer harvested as Pennsylvania.
So I was looking at the Wyoming one here. They I think the processor is compensated for their work and time. So the hunter themselves doesn't have to pay for it, but somebody's paying the processor at some point. And I think that's probably similar in the others.
Usually from what I've seen, it's they don't pay like the going rate for it because it's usually all ground. So if you look at kind of their pictures that they have, it's like those bags of meat, like that are in the tubes, and that's ground. So it's easier for them because they can just debone it real quick, throw it through their big grinder, and it's less work, less time, I guess, for processing.
And I mean that you don't have to take some of the finesse of breaking down the cuts and steaks and roasts and stuff.
I like that though. I will always process for the food shelf like that because that's what I like doing. When I'm cutting an animal, I don't like just grinding it all. In fact, grinding burger is my least favorite part of cutting up a deer.
Mine too. I still have the deer I processed a couple weeks ago. I still have the scraps
burger meat
frozen. Yeah, it hasn't. I'll wait and grind it like when I'm done through everything else. Or I'm working on a sausage project right now, and so I'm kind of cashing up some stuff to have some content for that. But yeah, it's I don't know. And then I turn it all into like case sausage. We eat some ground like burgers and stuff, but for the most part, like if I'm going to make a burger, I'll just make a steak and just put it on there. If I'm going to do ground meat, I'd like to make sausages, like cased sausages as well.
Yeah.
So
I like to do a lot of like pasta sauces and stuff with a lot of ground meat in it.
Yeah.
That's a good use for it because you can't really put steak in your pasta sauce. I mean, you could. Maybe you could. I'm sure you could.
we try.
Yeah.
This year, Santa's bringing the power of Energizer into his workshop.
Whoa, the Energizer Bunny's got so much power.
Wait, he's powered up all the toys. I think that means we're done for the year.
I love this bunny.
He's the hardest working helper the North Pole has ever seen. And he wants all your gifts to have the power of the #1 longest lasting AA battery. So this holiday season, stock up on Santa's and the elves' favorite battery, Energizer Ultimate Lithium.
Save big with Kroger's 12 Merry Days of Deals. From December 4th through the 15th, you can clip a hot new deal each day on our app or website. And if you're a Boost member, you can save even more. So don't miss out and be sure to check our app or website every day from December 4th through the 15th to clip each day's hot new deal. It's 12 Merry Days of Deals, a holly jolly way to save for the holidays at Kroger.
This episode is brought to you by NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube TV. There's a lot to be thankful for this season. For one, I'm thankful you can get NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube TV right now for only $209. That's exactly what you need as we head right into the playoffs. You can invite your friends over. Maybe you have a multi-view. You could have 4 different games, one for you, one each for the 3 other friends you invite. You can change the games around. As soon as the outcome becomes pretty certain, dump that game, put in another one. I've become the multi-view master. The moment the one of the games is losing steam, I'm ready to move right in and move it for another one. Build your own multi-view. One of my favorite words. Thank yourself this holiday season. Get NFL Sunday Ticket for the rest of the NFL regular season for just $209. Sign up now at youtube.com/BS. Terms and embargoes apply. Device and content restrictions apply. No cancellations.
So I guess the big question is, how can more folks become involved? I guess both in your state and out of your state.
Well, I'll start with in our state. So, once we're able to accept donations, I mean, one of the, I guess, easiest and very helpful ways people can be involved is to donate some money to help process the animals, because that's really where the work is processing, and that's what takes money and time. So, donating for to that, to help fund the processors to process this stuff is a huge way you can help. The other way, I mean, I've had people call and offer to help cut up meat, but most of them have no experience cutting meat, so it's like yeah, I'm very happy that they're willing to do that, but unfortunately it's hard, especially if they're not a processor and they don't have facilities. It's not really feasible. But as far as distribution, I can see that being something in the future that we would need volunteers for. Like I was saying before, picking up meat from the processor and bringing it to the food shelf. So like being on call essentially, or just having the processor have their number so that whenever they have a shipment ready that's processed, they can call up this number and be like, hey, I got 60 pounds ready to go, and that person could go pick it up after work or whenever. Usually the processor doesn't need you to pick it up immediately. It's within a day or two, and then bring that to the food shelf. So I know that the Pennsylvania organization, they have volunteers for that. And that would be hugely helpful once we get our nonprofit started to have something like that, I think.
And I saw too, so I was just looking on the Venison for Vermonters webpage on I think it's the DNR page. It's got a donation button on there.
It does, yes. Well. So we do accept donations right now, but once we get the nonprofit started, it's going to be so much easier to actually pay butchers, because right now, paying through the state, it's a lot harder, because there's contracts, there's insurance required for processors, and different things like that. Things that, as a nonprofit, you would not be required to have to pay. You know what I'm saying? So.
No, it's good. It's good. All right.
So that's kind of and for other states looking to get into this, I think just maybe thinking about it, like having that discussion, like how. And I think a lot of states do have some sort of program like this, from my research anyways. They have some sort of program, but a lot of states, like you mentioned before, don't fund the program. So it's literally just like a program, and there's no money involved, like the hunter pays for the processing of the animal and all that.
Yeah.
And it's not really so much, I don't want to say it's not a program, but it's
not as volunteer based or time bound as this program.
Yeah, and it limits the amount of meat that can actually be processed or that is processed and given away whenever you don't have some sort of funding source.
Sure. No, I mean it makes sense. It's like, what is it? That all plans are good, but logistics are key. Like something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's a quote.
With this program, Jeff and I just started doing it because we knew if we tried to get something started, like, develop a program, and we just decided, like, we're just going to do it. We're just going to start cutting the meat, and we're going to start giving it to people, to food shelves. And, like, that's kind of how it started. It's just two people being like, we're just going to make this happen. We're not going to like wait for, making a nonprofit and for, developing strategies to fund processes. We're just going to process.
Sure.
We both have a background in cutting meat, so I was like, okay.
I appreciate that. It makes it, like grassroots, like very true into the nature of it, of just people helping people.
Yeah.
Which I think is awesome.
And there's a lot of red tape nowadays, when you try to get something started. So if you can kind of just get it started on your own, and then kind of work towards developing it, I think that can sometimes be the best strategy.
So how do you think sort of like maybe other state agencies or even policymakers could encourage this sort of program to start up? Or I guess that's the question. Do you think it's something that belongs? And sorry if I put you on the spot with that. No, do you think it's something that belongs sort of as part of a state program, or do you think it is better like living in that sort of nonprofit realm?
When we first started, I thought state would be great. But the problem is state agencies have a lot of, like I was saying before, a lot of restrictions about, who they can pay, how they pay them. In the state of Vermont, for instance, you have to put things up for bid and, the lowest bidder, that sort of thing. And when you're trying to hire a processor in a certain area of Vermont, that's very difficult. First off, there's not that many processors really to even bid on it. And then, like, you need them in a specific area, not not somewhere else. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, I don't know if I'm explaining that right, but
No.
one like in a certain town, you know?
Yeah.
You don't want to put it up for bid for a bunch of different towns.
Yeah.
You need that one in that town. So that's difficult. And then also the insurance requirements for the state are difficult because a lot of these processors are not, they're doing it part-time. They have a process, you know, and a lot of them are just deer season processors. So just like wild game processors. They're not processing year round for domestics. Some of them are, like the volunteers we have right now are, but some of them aren't. We have like a lot of wild game processors in Vermont that just do it for deer season, or just wild game. So they don't do any domestics. And those people, it's a smaller business. And like the guy I worked for in Bradford, we would do like 300 and something deer a season. So we were a small company really. And I was one of 2 processors there. So, and there was a couple like kids he'd hired to come in and like help with burger and stuff. But like it was just me and this other guy that were like the main processors at that shop. So that was like a small shop that probably wouldn't be able to afford insurance. But they were a legit butcher shop, you know?
Yeah.
So those are kind of some of the hurdles that I think having a nonprofit would be just easier in general to further the program. And, you know, I just, that's why I want to develop a nonprofit.
I like it. No, I think you answered both my questions with that. So
okay. I'm
it's
sorry,
good.
I was kind of rambling.
No. That's 100% sort of, not where I thought it was, but like that answers the questions for sure.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, obviously if there was a state agency that wanted to fund the program, that'd be awesome, you know? But of course, as you know, state agencies don't have a ton of money.
Yeah.
And all that money is allocated. And like, yeah, that would be hard. That'd be really hard. It'd have to start like at the governor level or something like that. To even...
My question, well, and this is just thoughts, and I have a bunch of thoughts all the time, unfortunately. Well, fortunately for some, unfortunately for others. But like, whether there's like federal-based grants, I wonder, especially to like looking at it from the food aspect of like getting a grant for that as well, which would unlock it sort of being in the nonprofit realm as well.
Yeah, and like I'm sure there's a ton of stuff that could be had, you know. I just don't know about it, and I don't necessarily always have the time or ever have the time to look into that stuff. So yeah, if there was somebody like that wanted to look into that stuff, you know, that was maybe a grant person, you know, that knew ins and outs of those things, that would be super helpful to any sort of organization or effort like Venison for Vermonters, you know, for like another state, for instance.
Sweet.
If somebody wanted to do that, because really to develop the program and to grow it, you need to have those sorts of people looking into that stuff.
So what's one, we're going to wrap up here in just a minute, and I'll give you opportunity to sort of, we always close out with sort of last thoughts. So what's one thing you would want people to take away from sort of like anything about the program or anything that you're doing that you think would land well? Yeah,
well, I always was raised like not to waste anything. You know, my mom would say, waste not, want not. So we have a lot. I feel like we're so wasteful in our society today. We just have, there's a lot of abundance, but a lot of stuff gets thrown out too. And I saw, you know, I see that with even just like wild animals that get hit by cars. Like we drive around like crazy nowadays. Everybody's driving a car, and there's a lot of animals that get hit by vehicles. And that's kind of where I come from with this program. It's like I wanted to make use of that stuff. I didn't want it to just rot on the side of the road and then attract more animals to eat it, and then they get hit. You know, like it seems so wasteful to me. And then to be able to utilize that and not waste that and provide it to people who actually need food. Like what? It's like a win-win, you know?
Yeah.
So that's what, and also just the connection with kind of the land. You know, when you eat wild meat, wild game, you're connected to the land. You're part of like that cycle of life in your area. You're part of the ecology of your landscape. And that also resonates with me. I mean, I do that in a lot of different ways. I eat a lot of, all I eat is wild game. I don't buy meat ever from the grocery store. So for me, that's a huge aspect of it too. You know, connecting people to the resource and showing them that like this is something that you can eat. And if you want to hunt this yourself, you can go get a hunting license and you can harvest this same stuff yourself, you know, and you will be connected to your to your food source in a very meaningful way. And you know, that's why people always wonder, you know, why do people hunt? Do they just like to kill things? You know, like why do people hunt? They just want to kill animals. But I mean, the reality is most people hunt because they want to be connected to the land, and they want to have that meaningful connection. So I see that through this program too.
Yeah, I think I see it as well, as far as like bringing back that connection. And I mentioned it earlier of like, you sort of open this through that like venison diplomacy lens of like, hey, here's this really nutrient dense, great tasting piece of meat that you yourself can also go and get if you want.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, self-sufficiency, being able to like do for yourself is something I really value, especially in a society nowadays where like people don't really do a whole lot for themselves. I mean, they have like their little niches. They go to work, they earn their money, and then they go buy everything, you know, they need. So being able to actually like take something and turn it into something that you can use with your own hands is very meaningful.
No. Yes, agreed. Well, I appreciate you coming on tonight and chatting. It's been a great conversation. We've talked about everything from moose to shanks to this awesome program that you and your colleagues, candles too, candles that you and your colleagues have started up. So thanks everybody for listening out there. I'll include all the show notes and subscribe to the show, whatever podcast platform you're listening to. Punch that 5-star button, leave us a review, tell us we're doing right, or, you know, tell us we're doing wrong. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.